The world in which we live can be divided into two very basic parts. Things that are alive, such as these microorganisms, and things that are not, such as this rock. Among living things, there are unbelievable variations. But as strange as it seems, this sea anemone, this elephant, these tiny rod-shaped bacteria, this crab, and both this butterfly and flowering plant all share certain traits that clearly distinguish them from non-living things. Scientists call these shared traits the characteristics of life. The first characteristic of life is that living things can reproduce. This means that, like these giraffes, they can produce new life that is very similar to themselves. The second characteristic of life is that, like these young fish, all living things can grow and develop, forming mature organisms that are capable of reproduction. The third characteristic of living things is that they can respond to the outside world. For example, these striped fish are responding to the much larger whitefish by getting out of its way. And this bee has sensed the pollen in this flower and is responding by gathering it to make honey. Being able to respond to things in the outside world is very useful because it helps living things find food, protect themselves from harm, find mates, and perform many other important activities. The fourth characteristic of life is that living things need to use energy to stay alive. For example, plants such as these grasses can trap the energy of sunlight, and this energy not only keeps the grasses alive, some of it is chemically stored in their leaves and stems, so that when animals like these cattle graze, they are able to get the energy they need to power their life processes. The fifth characteristic of life is that living things can change as their environments change. And that is because life has been able to change and adapt over millions of years to meet some very extreme conditions, that living things can now be found in almost every imaginable place on Earth, such as the algae that live in the boiling water of this hot springs pool, or the dry lichens that cover the surfaces of these rocks, or the bacteria that thrive in the human mouth and digestive tract. The sixth characteristic of life is that living things can move. This characteristic is obvious when movement is fairly rapid, but it is harder to see when it is slow, such as the movements made by plants as they turn their leaves toward the sun. When it comes to life, some creatures are very complicated, while others are quite simple. But no matter how simple or how complicated they may be, living things are always very highly organized in the way they are put together. In fact, it is because they are so highly organized that scientists usually refer to living things as organisms. If we look closely at how living things are organized, one fact stands out. They are all made up of cells. For example, the tips of these tiny onion roots, when stained and viewed under a microscope, look like this, a collection of tiny compartments called cells. Cells are defined as the simplest structures that can carry out all of the activities characteristic of life. That is, can reproduce, grow and develop, use energy, and so on. And because life cannot exist without them, scientists call cells the basic units of life. The tiny microscopic organisms seen here have only one cell. They are called single-celled or unicellular organisms, and are examples of some of the simplest living things. But as we saw in the case of the onion, as living things get bigger, they will always have more cells. In fact, some organisms have hundreds of trillions of cells of many different types. Creatures made up of more than one cell are called multicellular organisms. Within the bodies of multicellular organisms, cells have become specialized to carry out specific tasks. For example, these red blood cells are specialized to carry oxygen to other cells all over the body, while this white blood cell, stained with purple dye, is specialized to kill the harmful bacteria that cause certain diseases. Multicellular organisms can have hundreds of different types of specialized cells, and yet it is quite rare to find cells that carry out their tasks alone. That is because in complex organisms, cells are almost always found working together in organized groups. For example, layers of cells that are similar in structure and function are called tissues. Here we see a tissue of cells that makes up the outer layer of a leaf. Very often, several different types of tissues are found grouped together to form organs, as we can see here in a slice of a disease-fighting organ called a lymph node. Beyond that, certain organs combine to form organ systems, which when taken together create a whole organism. The human organism has 9 basic organ systems. The first is the skeletal system, which gives the body support and helps protect the delicate internal organs. Bones are the main organs of the skeletal system. The second is the muscular system, which allows the body to move. The muscles are the main organs of this organ system. The third is the nervous system, which senses the environment, receives information from the body, helps coordinate physical activities, and makes it possible to think. The brain is the main organ of the nervous system. Fourth is the circulatory system, for carrying blood to cells throughout the body. The heart is the main organ of the circulatory system. Fifth is the excretory system, which allows the body to rid itself of liquid waste. The kidneys are the main organ of the excretory system. Sixth is the digestive system, which allows the body to process and absorb food and water. The stomach, small intestine, liver, pancreas, and large intestine are all important digestive organs. Seventh is the endocrine system, which is made up of different glands that produce the chemical messengers called hormones. Among the organs in the endocrine system are the thyroid, adrenal, and pituitary glands. Eighth is the respiratory system, which provides the body with oxygen and helps it get rid of the waste product, carbon dioxide. The lungs are the main respiratory organs. The ninth and last organ system is the reproductive system, which allows us to have children. The female ovaries and the male testes are the main organs of the reproductive system. As we have seen, all 9 of these complicated organ systems are made up of organs that are made up of tissue layers of specialized cells. In the next section of this program, we will look inside a specialized cell and learn how it works. The basic units of life are called two characteristics of living things are that they can and The creatures seen here are called because they have only one cell. Bigger, more complicated creatures will have many more than simpler ones. Because they are highly organized in the way they are put together, living things are often called similar kinds of cells usually form layers called in multicellular organisms, cells have become to perform certain tasks. The organ system used to pump blood is called the system. The organ system for breathing is called the system. The brain is the main organ of the system.